Buongiorno, Mission Podcast community. I'm your host, Doug Dvorak, and I'm extremely excited to bring you inspiring stories from incredible guests. These individuals are on a mission to create remarkable possibilities that not only enhance their own lives, but also make a lasting impact on the communities and individuals they serve. Stay tuned for some truly amazing conversations. Today's Mission Possible podcast title is Through the Lens of a Master, capturing the soul of the moment with Giuseppe Saitta. Giuseppe, welcome.
I'm happy to be here. I'm honored to be here.
High honor and privilege. I've known you for over 20 years. You are the consummate professional. What an illustrious career you've had, from covers of Time magazine, Fortune, all over. Just an unbelievable artist with a camera. So in this episode, world famous photographer Giuseppe takes us on a journey beyond the camera lens. We'll explore the art of capturing raw emotion, the secrets behind an unforgettable photograph, and how storytelling through images can transcend time and culture. From breathtaking landscapes to intimate portraits, Giuseppe shares his experiences, inspirations, and the evolution of photography in the digital age. Plus, we'll discuss the impact of AI on the future of photography and his most memorable moments behind the camera. Again, welcome, Giuseppe.
Happy to be here.
So let's talk about your early career in inspiration, Giuseppe. What initially drew you to photography, and how did you get started in the industry?
Okay, well, that's a bit of a long story, but I'll make it as short as I can. I started doing photographs for my high school yearbook, and I liked it. I had a nice little 35 millimeter Nioka camera, old equipment, but good for its time. And then shortly after high school, I joined the Air Force. And when I got through basic training in Texas, I was at Lackland Air Force Base, I think it was. I sat down at a desk in front of a sergeant who told me, "What do you like to do?" And I immediately said, "I like to take photographs." And so he just said, "I got the best assignment for you. This would be in Michigan, Selfridge Air Force Base." They handed me this 4x5 speed graphic, which I had never seen before. And they said, "You know how to use that?" And I said, "Sure," and taught myself how to use it. And I started taking lots of fun, the name of the newspaper was the Selfridge Flyer. And long story short, within 6 months, I was editor-in-chief of the Selfridge Flyer.
Wow, that's an incredible story. Giuseppe, who were your biggest influences or mentors when you were developing and starting your craft?
Well, when I was starting my craft, there was no such thing as internet, but there were lots of examples. I've got a short list here that I'm going to read because I didn't want to miss anyone. And these people begin, of course, with Ansel Adams, Edward Weston, Dorothea Lange, Annie Leibovitz, Robert Capa, Henry Cartier-Bresson, and Gordon Parks are my very favorite, but there's lots more great artists out there.
Excellent. Was there a particular moment when you knew photography would be your lifelong passion?
I'm not so sure if it was a particular moment, but as I gradually, basically earned my living in the Air Force as a photographer and an editor, I just kind of slipped into it joyfully. It was just like, hey, this is what I'm good at. This is what I'm going to do.
Excellent. Now let's unpack your creative process and style. How would you describe your signature style, and how has it evolved over the years?
Oh, that's hard to say too. I'm not even sure if I have a signature style, but what I want to say about that is, in photography, you're trying to make a record of something that's before you, that's happening. Okay, some event, some magnificent scene, some terrible scene, and so for me, the magic always happened when I could observe in what was in front of me and then give it a kind of love or justice or reason for being and say, look, I'm just, I take lots of shots, I edit them and through Photoshop primarily, which is my main editing system, and just make people say ooh and ah about the photographs. And when that's happening, then I'm happy.
I love what you just said. It really impacted me. That you've got a camera, but then you bring your love, passion, justice. That is so inspiring. I've got some chills.
Yeah.
What inspires your creative vision when capturing an image beyond love, justice, passion? You're in the moment, or what inspires that creative vision when you see something with your eyes and then you pick up the camera? What inspires you, that creative vision?
Two-part answer. One is I look at what I'm going to be photographing, either commercially or artistically or spiritually or whatever. And I make sure that my camera is set to the perfect settings for the situation, for the kind of light there is, for the kind of movement and action there is. So when I got my camera set up perfectly to capture everything, then I just take a breath and I try to feel what's in front of me. And this is true whether it's a commercial shot or any other kind of shot. I say to myself, what is this telling me? What do I feel in my heart? Photography is equally about brain and heart. So you got to have your technology set up so that you don't try to figure out what the hell you're trying to do while you're trying to do it. When you're all set up for that, all you got to do is push that button every time you see something fabulous or beautiful. And if I finish the shoot and I'm genuinely moved and can't wait to edit and share, then I'm happy.
Excellent. Now, unpack that a little more. Do you have any specific process or routine when preparing for a shot beyond what you just shared with us?
Well, that depends on what I'm shooting. Again, it's all about appropriate lighting, appropriate shutter speed, f-stop, all these things. They have to be set up perfectly so that I'm genuinely easily capturing what I want to capture, and then I don't have to struggle in the moment while I'm looking. Now with digital photography, you can see instant results. I don't try to get caught up too much in looking at every shot and so forth. I just make sure that things are running smoothly and the images look good, and I know I can perfect them in Photoshop.
Excellent. How do you balance technical precision with artistic expression in your work?
Well, they're two separate things. It's the question is correct. Balancing them is very important, and the best answer to that is once I have everything set up appropriately so I'm not going to miss any shots, then I concentrate on content. So it really is a constant balance between those two.
Excellent. Let's talk, and you were kind enough to send me some incredible photos that you've taken over your incredible career. You photographed some of the most remarkable subjects and locations. Do you have a favorite project or moment that stands out?
Well, let's see. There were some times early on when I was still at the Selfridge Flyer when we had our Cuban Missile Crisis, where there was, my job was to go out and basically interview people for the newspaper. It was a weekly newspaper. And I think the crisis lasted a few days. I can't remember now. But my main objective there was to get a sense of how the people, at least in my air base, Selfridge Air Force Base, felt about what was happening. And it was not fun. I mean, it was, I think it was probably our first big crisis after World War II. I don't remember, but it was pretty intense. And all I can say is thank God for JFK for helping to solve the problem.
Excellent. So have you ever faced unexpected challenges on a shoot, and how did you handle them?
Well, I hope I handled them professionally always. There can be challenges. There can be uncooperative people that you try to bring over to your side of the project. I remember, I also had a lot of training after the Air Force. We can go into it in a minute, but I had a lot of training in filmmaking. And I remember once I was given the assignment this is when I was already in North Africa. We can get to that later. At the radio TV station where I was working, my commander there and I were up on the roof of this tower, and these couple of I forgot the kind of jets, but they were powerful Air Force jets. And the idea was to get a shot of them coming in at us, and then following overhead, and then catching them getting away from us. So I did. I had a 16 millimeter camera, no audio at this point, but we did have a tape recorder for the audio separately. And my commander and I were up on this roof. We had our cameras, and he gave the command, do the flyby. And so I do my job, zoom, boom, go by. And when I return, my commander was on the ground, kind of almost shivering. He dropped the camera. And so the question here is, make sure about your safety. These jets were probably 100 feet above us. They weren't going to hurt us.
Wow.
But they were loud. And so I just did my job, and the thing, and if you're going to be a professional with a camera, whether it's motion, video, still, whatever, just get your ducks in order and follow the program. You get good results.
Beyond that story of the jets in North Africa, what's the most adventurous or risky shoot you've ever done?
I was visiting some friends in Hawaii, and we all decided to take a trip over to the Nepali coast, to those beautiful mountains and shore and everything. And I had I guess an ocean-going single, what do you call those things? Canoe no, it wasn't a canoe. It was a
outrigger.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, and anyway, I got a little bit perhaps too exuberant, and I got away from my group. There were about, I think, 15 of us. And I went offshore a bit, and then some huge waves came in. Fortunately, my professional gear was in a sealed hatch in the boat, but the boat was completely overturned, and I was like out there swimming. I had a life jacket, but I was too stupid to put it on. And so things got pretty hairy, and I thought I was going to say goodbye right there on the Nepali coast. And then somebody came along with one of these things, I forgot what you call them, sail rig, sailboard. Mm-hmm. And he just said, "Hey, how you doing? You doing okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I could use a hand." So he got me over to another boat, and my life was spared, which was that was an interesting little episode. I was much younger, but that's probably the most difficult thing I've ever had to do.
Giuseppe, what we have on the screen now is your 7-Up picture. It is incredible. Unpack that picture for us.
Okay, well, this was after all of my career in the Air Force, which took me first to Germany. A little back knowledge here. I was trained for 3 months at Wiesbaden Air Force Base in radio and television news network stuff. So, and then I was assigned to Wheelers Air Force Base, Tripoli, North Africa, where in only about 6 months, I became editor-in-chief of the Armed Forces Radio and Television News Network in North Africa. I was like the Walter Cronkite of North Africa.
That's a big job.
Oh, it was a very big job. And I'm just going to say one more thing about it, that after 3 years of doing that, I was reassigned to Bentwaters Air Force Base in England, which turned out to be nothing but a glorified, sort of radio system that only people that could tune into it could get it. I was happy, but it wasn't as satisfying as my North Africa assignment. So the base commander wrote me a letter and said, "Would you be willing to come back to North Africa and get this news department back to the way it was when you were there?" Which I said gladly. I said yes, and that got me, really involved in radio and television news. I had a 1-hour television simulcast every day, So it was great news.
Giuseppe, when we were preparing for this this podcast, you sent me a number of different photos. Incredible. Walk us through the 7-Up photo.
Okay, so that was a simple, when I got out of the Air Force, I got this assignment in a very nice commercial studio in New York City, Bob Crandall Associates. And a lot of stuff came through. We had a 5-bay studio, always something going on. And so now 7-Up came to us and says, hey, we got a new label. We're going to change the look of our bottles. We want you to do a spectacular shot with one old bottle in the background and all the new bottles and some 7-Up. And I set it all up, lit it beautifully, and then I had a case of 7-Up, and I was pouring it into this glass. And it wasn't very exciting until I decided, hey, put a glass of water on the set, popped a couple of Alka-Seltzers in there, and it was magic.
You put Alka-Seltzer in it. That wasn't just a natural carbonation. Was
No.
that your own creative idea?
Yes. And
Awesome.
It's part and parcel of what we do in advertising. I'm not crazy about it, but you got to get the shot. So nobody knows whether it's 7-Up or Alka-Seltzer.
Alka-Seltzer. That's
So
a great story. Keep going.
Yeah, and they loved it. And actually, I made a lot of money when I was working commercially in New York. It was good.
Excellent. Giuseppe, let's talk about the art of storytelling in photography. How do you approach storytelling through your photography?
Well, I guess I'm fortunate because I got my degree in college in filmmaking. And so, as you know, as everybody knows, filmmaking is not about one image. It's about something happening moment to moment, second to second. So there's a story built in whatever you're shooting with a motion picture camera. And so I automatically translate this to, and I ask myself, is this a single shot that I'm doing that I want to make absolutely memorable? Or is this a process of explanation of some event or something that's happening? And we want to give different views of this topic or subject. And that's especially true in architectural photography, because basically you're trying to give the best possible representation to some architect's idea or creation. And so that's a story right there, if it's architectural work. Unless it's a one single shot of the Eiffel Tower or something like that, And then the same thing happens, for example, early on when I was struggling to make a living, I did a number of pretty high-end weddings. And so, when you do a wedding shoot, there's a whole story there. And you cover the whole thing from beginning to end, often from dressing the bride and rehearsal dinners and right down to the drive away with the car. So there are stories, and the thing about stories is that you want to try to be as clear and explicit as possible to your audience, so that there aren't any difficulties in understanding what you're trying to promote or to tell the story you want to tell.
Excellent. Great. Giuseppe, in your opinion, what separates a good photographer from a truly great photographer?
Oh, that's hard to say. I've been called a very good photographer, and I think what separates a really great photographer from an average or even good photographer is that a really great photographer gets themselves completely involved in what they're shooting. If it's a person, you want to know about them. If it's a problem, you want to try to help solve the problem. If it's a very difficult, complex situation, you want to try and simplify as much as possible with individual shots. The thing is, always try to simplify. Either if it's a series of photographs or a single photograph, simplify and beautify. So
simplify and beautify. Excellent. Giuseppe, how do you capture raw emotion and authenticity in your subjects?
Well, first of all, the best advice I can give a photographer who's confronted with a difficult situation is to take a breath, remain calm, and assess what's going on. If it's really dangerous, then I urge you to take care of yourself. I mean, you're not going to be able to take any more pictures if somebody takes a shot at you.
Right.
However, no matter how difficult the situation is, there's always a way to kind of calm things down. As the photographer or the author of capturing what is happening before you, you're not going to do very well if you get all excited and emotional and what have you. It's okay to get emotional as long as you contain that emotion and maybe even bring it to your heart and make you more sensitive to what's happening. If you're a war photographer and there are people suffering in front of you, the best thing that you can do is not get too emotionally involved and just try to capture the situation as carefully and as literally as possible to show the world what's happening. So maintaining a friendly, calm attitude is probably number one for me.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Giuseppe, again, in all those great photographs you sent me, specifically, you've been on the cover of Fortune magazine several times. Talk to me about that abstraction. That was just a piece of art. Unpack that for our listeners.
Yes, for that Fortune 500, there are so many individual companies and corporations involved here that you can't be favorable to any one of them, really. At least that was the instructions to me from Fortune magazine. So what I did is I walked around New York at night, and I with a tripod and a camera, and I started taking all these amazing photographs, which were a little bit. What I wanted to show in this was the exuberant energy of a metropolis like New York as a background for this Fortune 500, and they just loved it. They picked this.
What time at night was this?
Oh, I think it may have been between 10 and midnight.
Okay.
I don't remember exactly, but I lived in New York. I worked in New York. It was no big deal for me.
So you were literally walking the streets.
Exactly. Walk in the streets, say what's here, what's there. This may be somewhere around Times Square. I can't remember exactly, but it doesn't matter. What matters to me is that does it give you the sense of wow, this is exciting. This is a big city. This is big corporation stuff. So main thing for me is that they bought the image and they loved it.
Excellent. Let's switch topics into photography and technology. How has technology, including AI, changed the landscape of photography?
Oh, well, it has totally transformed the very idea of photography. Early on, you just press a bulb or push a shutter and capture something in film, then you process the film, and then you go to work on making it look great. Now then came digital photography. And back then I was using all Nikon equipment. I had great, about 14 lenses and 3 bodies and stuff. And I kept writing to Nikon, when are you guys going to switch over to digital? It seems to be the coming thing. And I kept getting, we're working on it, blah, 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 blah. In the meantime, Canon had come out with some fabulous digital equipment. And so I sold all my Nikon stuff and bought Canon equipment.
Really?
Yeah, and I never forgot about film, but I said, hey, I'm working. In fact, the impetus came from my editors and people I was working with says, hey, we don't have time for you to process your film. We need the images right now. So I made this change, which was interesting, and for me it was fabulous because I got instant feedback on what I was doing. And so I think that stepping from film to digital, that was an immense step in photography and filmmaking. Okay? Then comes AI. And I don't know what to say about it. I mean, it's a whole new universe.
It is.
So I think that AI can be very good, very powerful, and very useful to photography and many other disciplines. But I'm also a little, not afraid, but skeptical of its misuse. Mm-hmm. I mean, we know there are a lot of evil people on this planet. And if they can figure out how to turn something against humanity, they will do it. So I say to myself, I welcome artificial intelligence, but let's just remember that it's artificial. It's not us.
And
Okay.
that's true. And the real beauty of life is human nature, human beings, love, and being face to face. I'd like to share a short story with you. My first house in Chicago, very small bungalow. My roommate, great guy, Kurt Ackman, was a DJ, and he had over 10,000 albums. Then I got married, Kurt moved out, and he didn't want those albums. Guess what I did? I threw them out. My point is of this story is people are going back to vinyl, that great sound, sort of film to digital. So what are your preferences, film or digital?
Okay. My honest answer is I love them equally. I think that there's aspects about film that you cannot even approach with digital or AI or any of that stuff, especially large format. You get so much information on a 4x5 image that even today you would struggle to capture that digitally.
And Ansel Adams, I mean, talk about enormity of those incredible pictures. I have a print of one of his incredible landscape photographies. Giuseppe, what are your thoughts on digital manipulation in photography, and where do you draw the line between enhancement and authenticity?
Okay, for me, authenticity comes first. Authenticity is number one. Now, with digital photography through Photoshop or other means, one can take the image and enhance it, make it a little sharper, maybe boost the colors a little bit, maybe boost the contrast a little bit. But the minute you step from the idea that it's believable, it's real, it's beautiful, it's even intense, to that's not really very credible. Or I mean, I see so much stuff on the internet now that's just unbelievable, and I just pass it by. I used to look at it, I used to spend a little time with it. Lately, I just pass it by because I know it's basically BS. Okay, if a person takes an image and makes it his own or her own through digital manipulation and makes it an entirely different thing, even a totally abstract image, and admits it and says, this is my artwork, this is what I'm having fun here, then I applaud them and I say, good work, enjoy. But the minute you try to sell me an image that's been heavily manipulated as a real image, then I say, bye-bye. You're not fooling me. I've been around too long.
Digital Botox.
Exactly. Exactly
So,
right.
Giuseppe, do you think traditional photography skills are still essential in the digital age?
Absolutely. No question about it. These other systems, these newer, fabulous systems are just another way of capturing an image and then presenting the image. So you capture it, you manipulate it intelligently and skillfully, and then you present it. And so to me, a photograph is still a photograph. I don't care how you produce it. Just, am I loving it? Does it bring pleasure to my eyes and my heart? Or if it's reportage or news, is it accurate? Is it real?
I love what you said. I love what you said. Not only to my eyes it is impactful, but to my heart, emotion.
Right.
That's great. What a great response. Let's sort of morph off and talk about some advice for aspiring photographers. What advice would you give to aspiring photographers looking to break into the industry?
Okay, I think number one is, number one would be get yourself a really good mentor. Somebody who loves the process and is a good teacher and patient and willing to teach you. I've had many photography students. I even taught a class in filmmaking not too many years ago here in Idaho, in Boise. So the thing is, find yourself a good mentor, somebody who loves photography and loves teaching photography. And then be responsive to their needs. I mean, just don't empty your bucket out into their brain. Find out what they want to do. Find out what their loves are in photography, and then try to promote those and show them how to, ways to become really great at what they hopefully want to do.
Excellent. What common mistakes do young photographers make, and how can they avoid them?
Okay, let me see. Number one mistake when you're shooting people, watch the headroom. The space between the top of the head and the top of the page should be a reasonable amount, but not too much and not too little. You don't want to scalp the person. You want to give them a little breathing space. Okay, that's number one. Number two is watch your background. How are you going to set this up? Is it a portrait? Do you want to show an interior, a beautiful interior, or is it an outdoor portrait? Do we have pretty flowers or trees or skies? But always the framing. The person should be framed as, headshot, head and shoulders, and so on. So the framing is very important. I don't like even a video of somebody that shows, their head in the middle of the screen. We don't need the head in the middle. We need to look at the person, not the background so much. So watch your background to image to subject. It's very important.
Talk about lighting, the importance of lighting.
Oh, lighting is instrumental in, some of the best portraits I've ever done, of course, were done with artificial light. And I have my studio lights, and I know how to set them up to get the best kind of, to get the best rendition of the person before me. Right now, if you look at my photograph of this image, it's not exactly the way I would like myself for a beautiful studio shot, but it's important because it shows me and it shows books in my background, and it's not objectionable. So the first thing you want to do in an image is make sure that it's pleasing to the eye. Secondly, look out for problems in the background. And then a very important thing is always help your subject to relax, to feel at home, to feel welcome, to feel not intimidated, and you're going to get great results.
Excellent. Giuseppe, how important is networking and building relationships in the world of photography?
Very important. From the time that you start shooting as an amateur or professional photographer, and you begin to build a collection of images that are yours, that represent you, your almost simultaneous process here is to get other people involved as critics, as advisors. Do you like this? Is there a photo club I can join? We used to have a wonderful photo club here in Boise that's no longer with us, but every week we used to get together and just talk about photography. So getting together with friends who are into photography, either as admirers or as technical creators, form your liaisons, your friends, and then put together groups of people that love shooting a particular thing like architecture or outdoors or people or whatever. Put a little club together and go out and shoot to your heart's desire.
Excellent. And again, you sent me an incredible amount of beautiful art pieces of art, your photos. I counted 8 covers of Time magazine. I think that is a record for the photographer with the most covers of Time. Unpack for us your time at Time and what were the most interesting. Unpack a couple of those covers for us.
Well, let's see. I'm looking at my other screen here, and probably, let's see, my all-time favorite, I'm going through these. I think that my all-time favorite is that March 16, 1970 we had a model in the studio, and I shot an interesting graphic of a syringe, which I then, through mechanical means, which are not easy when you don't have digital, I put this photograph of this green syringe in front of the kid's face, which is sort of nonplussed a little bit, perhaps troubled.
And that was Time Magazine,
was
March
Time
16th,
Magazine.
1970.
1970, yeah, March 16th. It said,
Wow,
"Heroin
what a
hit-
piece of art.
Heroin hits the young," and it's only gotten worse ever since. But at least this was a wake-up call, and I must say I'm proud to be part of that.
Good for you. Let's talk about your future and legacy. What's next for you? Any upcoming projects or
Well-
aspirations you're excited about?
Well, my numero uno project right now is not in photography, but it's in literature, and I'm writing a novel. I call it a semi-autographical science fiction novel. It's called Icarus, and it's about a flying city.
Opposed to
And-
Icarus flying too close to the sun and melting.
Exactly. And I explain in the book why we named the city Icarus, because it's a reminder of a terrible incident which could have been avoided. But anyway, we have this flying city, and and I also in the same novel invented a 5 kilometer long dirigible. And it's a story. It's a science fiction novel about essentially the I hate to say this, but the stupidity of humanity, terrible things that we do to the environment, environmental collapses, and generally a story about a guy, a little known guy from Idaho, who designs this ship, this floating city that helps to save humanity. So it's kind of a fantasy novel. I'm about 3/4 of the way through it. I hope to get it published this year. We'll see what happens.
Here's Icarus, the Flying City, with Giuseppe's new novel coming out. How would you like your work to be remembered in the world of photography?
Oh boy. Well, I think it's an honor to be remembered at all. And if there are collections of my work for my friends and clients, if they use them as kind of a memory locker for them, if I've helped them to achieve some kind of a saving of their ideals and hopes and dreams and whatever they created, if I helped to make memories for them, which are wonderful, I'm satisfied. I don't need anything else, I don't need to be memorialized here or there or everywhere. I've got lots of stuff online. People can check it out. Often
You're a great artist, and you're very humble and genuine. Giuseppe, if you could photograph anyone or anything in the world that you haven't yet, what would it be?
Oh God, that's a deeply personal question. And if I had total control over whatever I choose to photograph, I would simply go back in time and do some wonderful reportage photography on Jesus. That's it. Nothing else,
Excellent. And last question before we get into our rapid fire round of questions.
Well-
Giuseppe, if you could go in a time machine and go back many decades and ask your younger self a question and give your younger self advice, what would it be?
Oh boy. I'm not sure I have much advice to give. I think if I were to go back to myself in high school or early on in the Air Force or even in New York City, my first big job, I would say just keep doing what you're doing. As long as you're in love with what you're doing, you don't have anything to worry about. If it's about just the money, that's a mistake.
Huge mistake.
Yeah.
Find what you love to do and do it the rest of your life. And if you find what you love to do, it doesn't seem like work. As you know, I'm a public speaker, author. My job is more fun than fun.
I know. I've followed you over the years, and you're very kind. You bring the best in people out, in your interviews, and I think that's wonderful. There's too many interviews that are basically at your throat, trying to make an impact, trying to do something, trying to make yourself look better than who you're interviewing. None of that works.
No, it doesn't work.
Yeah,
It doesn't
interviewers
work.
are just like this: two friends talking.
Two friends having a conversation. All right, Giuseppe, we're almost at the tail end. I don't know where this last 45 minutes has gone. I always love talking to you. This is called the rapid fire round of questions. Short answers, one word or short phrase. Are you ready?
Absolutely.
Film or digital?
I'm going to say digital now.
Favorite camera you've ever used?
Hasselblad.
Black and white or color?
I'm going to say both.
Most photogenic place you've been?
Oh my! I think it may be Machu Picchu in Peru.
Machu Picchu. One person, past or present, you'd love to photograph?
I'm going to say if I could travel in time and space, I would go back in time with my best commercial equipment and take some memorable photographs of Jesus.
Excellent. Favorite time of day to shoot?
I'm going to go dawn or dusk or shortly before and after, both times. That's my favorite time.
What's harder, portraits or landscapes?
I think portraits.
A photography trend you love?
Oh, gee, a photography trend I love is any system that makes people look good and love themselves.
A photography trend you dislike?
Lying in photographs.
If you weren't a photographer, what would you be doing?
I love abstract painting, and I've done lots of it, and I would probably have continued along that path.
Thank you. Well, Giuseppe, this has been an incredible honor, and I always love to chat with you. Thank you very much for the privilege and high honor of your time. And thank you, Mission Possible podcast community. Check us out. But before we leave, Giuseppe, if somebody wants to get a hold of your artwork, your new book, how can they reach you?
Well, it's hard to say because I've always been trying to get a website set up, but I never have. I'm always seem to be too busy. Look for me, Giuseppe Saitta, on Facebook. Call me anytime. I'm happy to work with you and give advice freely when the time is right.
And what's your number, Giuseppe?
My phone number is 208-250-9777.
Giuseppe, thank you for your time. Ciao, ciao for now. And thank you, Mission Podcast community. Check us out at missionpossible.biz and Carpe Diem.
Thank you.